This is Aberration, regarded by many to be the hardest DLC for Ark Survival Evolved. A multi-tiered map with 4 different zones, each with their own set of unique challenges to overcome. And in this video, I'm going to attempt to survive here for 100 days on hardcore difficulty. If I die at any time, my character will be deleted and the challenge will be over. Not only am I going to just try to survive, the final goal will be to defeat Rockwell, the end boss of Aberration, before the 100 days are over. Hope you guys enjoy. Let the challenge begin. This journey started like most others on Aberration, in the green zone. A relatively peaceful zone, the only real dangers here are raptors and ravagers. Oh, and if you have similar luck to what I had on my first attempt of this challenge, then you also have to worry about the basilisk. The start of this journey was rough. For my spawn, I chose Lower Mushroom Forest, one of the safest spawns on Aberration, or so I thought. A couple seconds after spawning in, I walked over some hallucinating mushrooms. Honestly, the game must be high on these mushrooms because there was no way I was even near these things on my screen. After almost dying to the effects of the mushrooms, I started gathering the essentials, picking berry bushes for fiber and punching trees for wood, in order to craft myself a pickaxe and hatchet. From there I made a spear to kill the smaller, cuter dinosaurs for their hide, a crucial early game resource. While gathering the hide, I spotted one of my subscribers over in the distance, and decided that this will be my first tame. A strong early game creature that didn't require a saddle to ride. Unfortunately, I quickly found out that I need a level 30 to be able to tame it. So we had our first goal in mind. Hit level 30 as fast as we can and tame ourselves a monkey. I crafted a full set of cloth armor. With hands this big, you would think the gloves would cost twice the amount of fiber than normal. Now while crafting, I came across bugs, a great source of early EXP. All you need to do is crouch with a spear and most of the time they won't even be able to hit you. After killing those, we quickly hit level 11. Still pretty far away from the level we needed for the monkey. One of the fastest ways to level in early game Ark is by crafting foundations, placing them down, demolishing them, and repeating the process over and over, which is the method I planned on using. So I crafted a bow, arrows, and some boulders for protection, and spent the night farming and crafting foundations. After spending the entire first day farming EXP, I managed to hit level 30, and immediately headed out in search of a monkey. It wasn't the same one as earlier, it ended up being a higher level, which is honestly pretty good. After feeding it its first berries, it looked like the taming wasn't going to take too long. The area the monkey was in also looked pretty nice, there didn't seem to be any aggressive dinos nearby, and it also had metal nodes. It seemed like the perfect spot for a starter base. So after following the monkey around for 15 minutes, the taming was complete. I decided to name him Ape so I'd feel like I had one of you guys with me at all times. Being this mobile early on in the game felt great, but something was missing. My monkey needed a cloth hat. There we go, much better. And this thing was strong too. I destroyed everything I came across until a pack of ravagers had me pinned to a rock. I barely managed to fight my way out of it. It was an insanely close call. During the night, I healed the monkey using this nearby plant before heading over to the metal nodes from earlier so that I could get a small base going. I crafted a forge, mortar and pestle, smithy, and some metal tools. With a metal pickaxe, farming metal was so much more efficient. It took multiple trips to just mine one rock. After a short break to assert my dominance over this massive thing that was nearby, I continued mining. It took a while, but the forges were full from all the metal around us. All this manual labor had my character dying of thirst, so I headed over to the lake to fill up my water skins. While the metal was smelting, I spent the rest of the night gathering meat and crafting narcotics. Honey was the word of the day for days 4 and 5, and no, this video is not sponsored. I'm referring to the in-game item honey. Whatever the opposite of a world record is what I should be awarded for how long it took me to actually find this thing. And I didn't even get it on camera. Just imagine a man and his monkey running around the green zone for 30+ minutes. With the honey gathered, I plan to tame myself a roll rat. The taming process for these things is just wait for them to burrow and throw honey on top of the hole. But before taming it, I wanted to collect 20 red gems, which would be needed to place down a gas pump. Gas balls would be much needed later on for crafting hazard suits as well as other things. After collecting the crystals, I tamed the roll rat and named him Rat. Jesus, how creative. Admired how ugly it was, as well as some weird texture glitch I had going on. I then realized that I can't actually use it because the saddle required me to be level 58. Now that the rat was back at base, and after a quick relog to fix the textures, I set myself a new goal of hitting level 58 so that I could craft the saddle. The new plan was to head out and tame a Dodicarus, but before that I wanted to get the gas collector producing ASAP, so I crafted cementing paste and then crafted the gas pump and placed it down on the nearby gas vein. I used the narcotics we crafted earlier to craft trank arrows and a crossbow and headed out to look for a Dodicarus. It didn't take long before I came across a level 100. It took such a long time to knock this thing out. When they curl up into a ball like this, their topper goes up much slower. After using up all the arrows we had, farming up some more and using up all of those, I finally managed to knock it out, but only because it started moving around again. The taming finished later in day 7, and I named him Rocky in an attempt to get a little more creative with my naming. Rocky randomly swung his tail and farmed so much stone off just one swing. It was pretty great because the base I had in mind would require a lot of stone. I put him on follow and started the long journey back to base. Hopefully this would be the last time that I would have to walk something back to base because I was now high enough level for cryopods. After an insanely slow walk back to base, it was time to start farming stone. I ran out of storage space almost immediately and crafted up a couple storage boxes to hold all the stone. If anything in this challenge was going to kill me, it seemed like it would be thirst. So I headed over to the river once more and filled up the water skins. On the way back to base, I checked on the gas collector we placed earlier and was greeted by some weird, glitchy, teleporting Ravager. Just ARK things, I guess. The gas collector had 150 gas balls so far, which was great. Should be more than enough to craft our first hazard suit later on. The next day I farmed a bunch more stone, and then I guess I forgot why I was farming stone in the first place, because in my notes it says I went to kill Spinos to hit level 58. Which was the whole reason I tamed a Dodicarus and farmed stone in the first place. But anyway, apparently I walked up and down the river on day 8 killing Spinos, which is honestly much better. It's the main way to get experience on Aberration. It was very easy for me to hit level 58, I just killed a handful of Spinos. And after heading back to the base, I learned the roll rat saddle. It was much more expensive than I thought, particularly with cementing paste. Luckily, I know of a great spot to farm keratin. So I crafted myself up a pickaxe and headed over to the spot. For those unfamiliar with Aberration or ARK in general, this is the entrance to go up to the surface. We will revisit this later on. For now, I just want the bones in the entrance. After some creative parkour with the monkey, I managed to get up without even needing to use the climbing pick, which I was pretty proud of. I then proceeded to punch the bones with the ape and get way more keratin than I would need for this whole 100-day challenge. I got over 11,000 in just a minute or two. It took much longer to actually get back to my base than it did to farm all of this. It was day 9 by the time I arrived back at base. I crafted up the cementing paste using the keratin we farmed earlier, as well as a flax set for myself and the roll rat saddle. After that, I took Rat out to farm some wood. Now it's very fun to use these things, but the turning radius and the hitbox are both awful. I couldn't complain though because I was able to farm much more wood than I would have been able to farm with a hatchet. Now, while I was out farming wood, I decided on where I wanted to build the base. It was located deep in the blue zone of Aberration. Aberration's blue zone is a lot more dangerous than the green zone I'm currently in. It's home to two of the most annoying things in the game, the Nameless and the Freezing Spores. The Nameless, annoying little monkeys that spawn from the ground anytime you don't have a light source active. Overall, it was a much more dangerous place than I was currently equipped to handle. And in order to relocate down there, I would need to tame myself a Bulb Dog and a high level Spino. Cryopods are relatively cheap, but they could only be crafted inside of a drop. It was day 10 by the time I found a drop to craft them in, but it was worth it. Moving dinos around will be so much easier with these things. I farmed the crystals next to the drop and crafted myself 4 cryopods. With this, we should be ready to find ourselves a Spino to tame. I headed back to base and crafted some more narcotics, and then we went out to find a decent level Spino. It wasn't long before we found a level 100. I doubt I'm going to find anything better than this without spending a long time searching, so this one will do for now. I lured it over to a nearby rock and started taming it. You may be thinking to yourself, wouldn't a trap have made this a whole lot easier? Well, yes. Yes, it would. Some people prefer free range eggs. I prefer free range Spinos. It started running when it was close to being knocked out and ended up getting knocked out in the distance. After I jumped down off the rock I used to tame it, I conveniently found a sheep, which is perfect. Ooh, there's a sheep. I really like the purple and green spine? I don't know, whatever it's called, I like it. While waiting for the tame, I realized I needed to be level 71 to craft the Spino saddle, so we wouldn't be able to use this thing for a while. The taming took longer than I thought, well into day 11. After I tamed it, I decided to name it Spiny. Damn, where has my creativity gone? I cried Spiny up and took him back to base. The next goal I had was hitting level 71 so I could craft the saddle for my Spino. So I used all the wood and the stone that I farmed earlier to craft stone building parts. I had an idea in my mind of what type of base I wanted to build, but no idea of how much of each part I would actually need. So I just crafted randomly. In my head, I think I may have bitten off more than I can chew with my base idea, but we'll find out later on. After a lot of crafting, I managed to hit level 71 and can now craft the Spino saddle. I then proceeded to run up and down the river, killing all the Spinos and crabs that I saw, as once again, this is the best source of EXP on Aberration. I farmed a lot of EXP on the Spino. It now had over 20k health and almost 600% damage. While I was farming, my microphone started making some weird staticky noise, and after reconnecting it, it caused my computer to blue screen. When I logged back in, all my ARK settings were reset. Honestly, the FPS and graphics seem a little better after the reset. Let me know if you think the graphics improved compared to the past 11 days. With the Spino leveled up, there was only a few more things I needed in order to make the journey down into the blue zone. I needed a bulb dog as well as some plant seeds. I saved a bulb dog that was about to be eaten by a Carno near my base and tamed it up, as well as a backup bulb dog. I then went to the nearby plant seed and waited around for it to spit seeds on the ground. I placed some compost bins back at base and filled them with rat poop in order to make fertilizer so that I could grow the plant Z in the blue zone. And then I waited, and waited even longer, because fertilizer takes a really long time to produce. It was late into day 13 when I finally had enough fertilizer to grow the plants. I loaded up the Spino with as many base materials as he could carry and headed off to the blue zone. In my notes it says gazed over the cliff to show where I would build the base. Before you ask how I'm going to get down there, let me show you the most efficient method. All risk, no reward, baby. If you jump off a dino right before it hits the ground, it won't take any fall damage and neither will you. After arriving at the base spot, I almost immediately regretted it. It was potentially going to take days just to move everything from the starter base down here. But I was already down here, so I decided to commit to it. I used all the foundations to get the basic outline of what I wanted to build. It might look terrible now, but don't worry, it turns into something great. I placed down the crop plots with the plant Z to stop the nameless from spawning. And after seeing how much of the base was built in one trip, I decided the best course of action would be just to abandon the starting base altogether. Cryo up all the dinos and bring them down here into the blue zone. So that's what I did. I started the long journey back up to the starter base, cryoed up all of the dinos, loaded up the Spino with everything I could carry and jumped off the cliff once more. When I got back to the base, I placed down a smithy, forge and some storage boxes and started farming wood and stone again to replace everything that I left in my starter base. The blue zone is much richer in resources, so farming down here was really easy. After farming a bunch of resources, it was time to finish laying the foundations of the base. I quickly realized that this area I had chosen to build in was not flat at all, so I had to incorporate some stairs to deal with the parts where I couldn't place the foundations. Normally when building a base, I would design it all in single player, but I couldn't do that because this world was already in single player, so I was just going off the top of my head. By the end of day 15, the layout was complete. Now that the foundation was complete, the next thing that we needed was large stone walls. I had 70 of them crafted already, so I placed those down first and then calculated how many more I would need. I was already questioning my sanity at this point, taking on such a large scale project in a 100-day challenge, but I had big plans. In all the trailers for the different ARK DLCs, they usually feature a big PvE style base, something that looks nice but is not very functional, so that was my goal with this base. The trophy wife of bases, if you will. So after placing a few stone walls and a gate for a little bit of protection, it was time to start farming resources again. I ended up calculating that I would need 92 stone walls for the perimeter, and then double that to have a wall that I could walk on top of. So I was in for some serious farming. Day 17 and 18 was spent farming stone and wood. Towards the end of day 18, I crafted 100 large stone walls, which was enough to finish the perimeter of the base. If you couldn't tell by now, I was attempting to build a castle. The walls were super lopsided, but hey, castle walls were probably uneven back in the medieval days, right? Actually, probably not. I'm guessing the architect was just hung if it turned out to be lopsided. I had mixed feelings at the end of day 18. On one hand, the perimeter was done, But on the other hand, there was still a lot of farming to do in order to achieve what I wanted the base to look like. While showing the perimeter of the base, I thought to myself, can Spiny even fit through this gate? Well, no. No, he can't. Halfway through day 21, I figured I had enough resources to at least finish crafting the remaining large walls. I was right, I crafted all the walls and I still had a lot of resources remaining for the rest of the building parts. Picking up such a large amount of materials by yourself is hard. The best way was to demolish the storage boxes and drop the items to myself from the bags, which allowed me to bypass how many things I could hold at once. With everything crafted, it was now time to finish building the base. I placed the remaining large walls, ceilings on top of all the walls, windows on top of all the castle towers, and stone door frames with stone railings along the rest of the walls. I had trouble getting up to the top of the towers due to some odd climbing pick bug, so I had to craft ladders just to finish up this part of the build. I originally had a couple more things planned just to make it look a little bit more like a castle. I even crafted the parts for it, but it was just way too finicky and would have wasted a lot more time. Day 26 was coming to an end and I'd finally finished the base. Well, technically it's just a wall, but nevertheless it was finished and I was proud. I feel like one of those rich people who own mansions but inside they have like zero furniture. Literally just one smithy and one forge. So what do you guys think? Why don't you leave a comment, something like, wow, you should definitely get to build the base for the next ARK trailer. I think that'd be a nice comment to receive. I built a small base inside the walls, keeping with the same castle theme. I crafted myself some forges, storage boxes, and a smithy, and moved everything into the new base. You could say things were coming along nicely. Day 27, and I've made zero progress towards killing the end boss. Looks good enough. Would have looked cooler if the main building was taller than the walls, but I'm lazy and this will do for now. With the base complete, it was now time to start making progress again. I headed out in search of an Anki so that I could farm metal more efficiently. I would need metal for hazard suits, bullets, and saddles later on. After traveling around the blue zone for more than half a day, I came across a level 48 Anki. Compared to the Dodicarus, this thing was so easy to knock out. It was a very quick tame as well. I decided to name him Spike. I cried him up and headed back to the base. On the way home, I stopped by the river to kill some trilobites, as I would need oil to craft a fabricator later on. I also got some polymer from annihilating this entire family of crabs. The next day, I tested out the new Anki. I can't say I'd ever farmed metal with a level 50 Anki before, but I definitely don't want to do it again because it was so inefficient. After just one swing, the Anki would be overweight and I would have to run the metal back to base on foot. If that wasn't bad enough, half the rocks around my base seemed to be glitched and I couldn't actually mine them. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as a stone ramp in the game, but it was time to make my base wheelchair accessible. Cryoing the Spino every time I wanted to take it outside was really annoying. I wasn't sure what would be more ugly, a giant wooden ramp going over the wall, or a giant gate that would have had to been 3 times the size of the wall. So in the end, I decided to build a wooden ramp. Honestly, it was so much more convenient. I don't think I'll ever have to use the gate again. Thought I could use the ramp to launch myself off with the roll wrap, but it didn't work, which I suppose is a good thing, otherwise I would have went flying off into the radiation zone. Now that the base was completely walled in, I enabled wandering on Ape, which would allow him to walk around the base collecting fiber by himself. I crafted a fabricator in order to make myself a hazard suit, but I quickly realized that I would need a lot more crystal. So I went out on the terrible Anki once more and farmed up the crystal that I needed. I did a quick relog to fix some weird brightness bug that I was having and then crafted my first hazard suit as well as a glider. Literally the only purpose of me being able to walk along my wall is for this moment right here, so that I can demonstrate how the glider suit works for those of you that don't know. I consider myself to be a pretty good glider pilot. So with the hazard suit and the Spino being leveled, I think we're ready to take on the rock drake trench. All I needed now was a lot of climbing picks just in case Spiny died and I had to climb all the way out of the radiation zone. It was time to embark on the most dangerous journey of the challenge so far, our descent into the red zone. Now, the red zone was the most dangerous place on the map. Entering the zone without a hazard suit was almost certain death. Every second you spend in this zone damages your hazard armor, so if you don't make it out in time, you'll die due to radiation. On top of that, it's also home to the Reaper Queen, who, similar to the Nameless, unburrow themselves from the ground when you're nearby. Now I had 2 options for getting here. One of them was gliding down straight to the rock drake nest from the wall of my base, which is again, as I said, the high risk, no reward option, or I could just walk down with the Spino. Now being 30 days into the challenge already, I elected to go with the second option, the safer one. I crafted myself a second hazard suit just to be safe and started my journey down into the red zone. On the way down, I stopped to mine 85 red gems, which would be needed later on to craft a rock drake saddle. After what was a long but relatively peaceful journey, I finally made it to one of the entrances of the rock drake trench. This red one looks so cool. I was hoping I'd get an egg of this color until I saw that it was level 16 and then I didn't want it after that. I headed into the trench and spotted the first egg. From what I could see, it looked pretty safe. I couldn't see any rock drakes around. So I used the climbing picks and climbed up to the nest. The egg was only level 20. I picked it up anyway, just so all the rock drakes would swarm me and I could clear them out. And swarmed I was. They were coming from every direction, falling on me from the sky. It was like I was out shopping during a Black Friday sale. In the end, I only lost half my health. My Spino was just too strong. So I continued on in the trench, and I found the second egg, which was also level 20. You know what they say, third time's the charm. I climbed up to the third nest, and it was level 20. This level 20 rock drake really gets around the trench, hey. From there, I spotted the fourth egg in the distance. Praying that it was not level 20, I climbed up to it. It was level 144, this was it. An almost max level egg for my in-game settings. I was worried because I hadn't cleared out this part of the trench yet. I quickly picked up the egg and rushed back down to my Spino and waited for the swarm. I could see them climbing down from the cliffs. My Spino was already half health. If the level 144 was in the swarm, it could be over for me. This could be it. It was a very close call. My Spino dropped to really low health, but I couldn't leave yet. I saw another egg right in front of me. I healed the Spino up a little with raw meat and climbed up to the egg. Oh, it was perfect. It was another level 144. I picked up the egg, and to my surprise, no rock drakes came when I picked it up. I think we killed the ball when we picked up the previous egg. With 2 high level eggs, I decided not to push my luck and made my way back up to my base. I arrived back at the base on day 33, feeling pretty good about myself and the challenge so far. We're a third of the way through, and I thought the progress was going pretty well, but I wanted to get these rock drake eggs hatched as soon as possible. So I made the journey back to my starter base to check if I left anything valuable behind, mainly because I needed pearls, which I would need for electronics. Nope, only garbage was left at the base, so I went to the nearby lake and farmed myself up some pearls. I crafted myself up a generator and 3 air conditioners. 3 air conditioners was apparently not enough because the egg was still too hot. I crafted 2 more aircons, and apparently 5 was not enough either. So after crafting 2 more, that did the trick and the egg started incubating. But before I could hatch the eggs, there was one more thing that I was missing. I would need to farm myself up some nameless venom, as it was the only food that baby rock drakes would actually eat. Now, nameless venom is pretty easy to get. You just stand anywhere in the blue zone and turn off your light source. Now that I had the venom, it was time to finally hatch the drakes. I named one of the rock drakes Dwayne and the other one Drake. Get it? Dwayne Drake. Dwayne looks a lot cooler. No idea why I put raw meat in their inventory after just saying that venom was the only thing they eat, but oh well. I just AFK'd around the base for the rest of the day waiting for them to raise up. After imprinting the rock drakes, I tried to craft a saddle, but I was short on fiber. Luckily, Ape has been hard at work these last few days, slaving away, so fiber was no issue at all. I AFK'd a little more until the rock drakes were fully grown, and now it was time to level them up. You guys know what that means. Time to mindlessly run up and down the river killing Spinos. It took some time for me to get used to the controls again, but the mobility on rock drakes is just amazing. It makes getting around Aberration so easy. I killed Spinos for all of day 35, and the rock drake ended up with 23k HP and 650% damage. It was coming along pretty well. I just wish that I'd put a few more points into stamina because it does drain pretty quickly while I'm gliding around. With the rock drake leveled, I made my way back to base. Today's night cycle was 10% day and 90% night, which means it's a perfect day to farm drops on the surface because the nighttime lasts a lot longer. The surface of Aberration was not a kind place. Only accessible during the nighttime, it's home to swarms of Seekers and Reaper Kings, who, similar to the Reaper Queens, unburrow from the ground when you're nearby. And if you're an unlucky one who finds yourself on the surface when it ticks over to daytime, you'll almost immediately be burned to death. So it's crucial that you keep an eye on the time of day at all times. This was a very interesting day of the 100-day challenge. I hopped on my Drake and headed straight for a surface entrance. I went straight to the first drop I saw, which happened to give me 2 long necks. It wasn't the greatest drop, it could be useful for taming, but when I picked up the long necks, I thought to myself they seemed a little too good. So I found myself a safe spot and logged out in order to lower the quality of the drops, as to not make the challenge too easy. Now when I logged back into the game after lowering it, this happened. I was immediately set on fire even though it was still nighttime in the game. It was very clearly a bug. I managed to god mode as fast as I can by typing it in the chat here. Unfortunately, the rock drake was killed as well as the bulb dog. I know I technically cheated here, but I couldn't let the challenge end to some weird bug, so I think it's justified. Now, luckily I grabbed 2 Drake eggs when I was down in the Rock Drake Trench, because you know what time it is, boys, it's time to go and farm some more XP again. Towards the end of day 38, I finished leveling the other Rock Drake after we lost the first one to the bug. I went with a little more stamina on this one to make getting around a bit easier. I made a point to head back to the surface at the exact same time when I started burning last night to show any non-ARK players that you should not be burning at that time of day. So my first drop had a Stego saddle and a pike, both useless for this 100-day challenge. The main things I'm hunting for up here are Megalosaurus saddles, a nice shotgun, and some armor, which would all be needed for the final boss fight. Overall, it was a pretty bad night of drop hunting. Looks like I was going to have to farm the surface any chance I got in order to get decent drops. I headed back to the surface again the next day, and after fighting off some Reaper Kings, I got myself a really nice shotgun in a drop. It was exactly what we needed for the final boss fight later on. While I was waiting for the next drop, a blue drop to land, the Alpha Reaper actually spawned. It was perfect, a very rare creature that I needed to kill in order to start the final boss fight on hard difficulty. Honestly, I had no idea how much health this thing had, no idea if I was going to win the fight in time. I retreated to a nearby pillar to heal my Rock Drake up using some raw meat. After healing it up, I saw an opportunity. The Alpha Reaper seemed to be stuck on a rock. Now was my chance to take him down. Or so I thought. ARK had other plans. It just randomly despawned. No Alpha Reaper trophy for me today. It was kind of sad because I may not see another one of these again in the next 60 days. The day cycle of day 41 was 50-50 day and night. So instead of going to the surface, I thought it was time to tackle our first cave. Aberration has 3 caves in total. I would need to collect an artifact from each one of them in order to start the final boss. The first cave on the list was the Glowtail cave. So I took the Anki out to farm some flint, which I would need for gunpowder to craft shotgun ammo. I realized immediately again how slow the Anki actually was, and I used a pickaxe I got from the surface instead to farm it by hand. While farming, I saw a yellow drop in the distance, which surprisingly had a flak helmet in it for me, which was really nice. I have no idea who told Ape that he's allowed inside, he should be outside picking fiber. But anyway, I crafted gunpowder as well as flak, zip lines, parachutes, and shotgun ammo, which is everything that I would need in order to take on the Glowtail cave. After the crafting finished, I headed over to the cave. Now, the cave was way darker than I remember. I think it was a graphical glitch because I couldn't see anything outside of my Bulb Dog light radius. It was legitimately terrifying. It felt like I was playing some kind of horror game rather than ARK. I was very nervous. One random raptor that pops out of the darkness and it was over for me. The run was done. So I proceeded with extreme caution. I gammed up to the maximum, which helped a little bit, but not much. I ziplined over the large gap towards the blue drop. Surprisingly, my shotgun didn't actually kill them in one hit. My whole life flashed before my eyes. Thankfully, I pressed the parachute button in time and landed on this random ledge. If I fell down into the water with the Ravagers, I surely would have died and the 100-day challenge would have been over. Luckily, the Ravagers already fell off the cliff, so I headed deeper into the cave towards the artifact. The cave seemed pretty empty after those Ravagers and the run went kind of smoothly all the way to the artifact. After looting it, I headed back towards the entrance of the cave. And of course, Aberration had other plans and decided it would start an earthquake. There was no way I was trying to walk along those narrow ledges during an earthquake, so instead I crouched, hid in a dark corner and waited it out. After the earthquake, I made it out of what I called the easiest cave on Aberration, almost dying, but still, 1 out of 3 artifacts acquired. We're on our way towards that final boss fight. After returning to base after the cave, I decided it was time to start taming our first Megalosaurus, which would be the key dinosaur I needed to defeat the final boss. So I crafted up some billboards, which would be the easiest way of trapping them and taming them. The first one I found was a level 76 female, and after knocking it out with my crossbow, I realized I had really strong long necks back at the base that would be much more efficient. I tamed this one up anyway and named it female. I didn't care about anything other than its ability to breed with a high stat male. Feminists, don't at me. After searching for quite some time, the next Megalo I found was a level 108 male. After knocking it out, I saw that it had pretty average stats for both health and damage. I wasn't too concerned because in the end, all of them would die in the boss fight anyway. So I decided this would be the one. It took almost a day for me to tame it and I named it Breeder Male. I knocked out and tamed a few more females for it to breed with. I crafted up a megalo saddle, lined them up in the base, and started the breeding. There we go, we got ourselves 3 megalo eggs. Now for the babies, we're looking for ones that have the same stats as the male, and any females will be added back into the breeding pool. Got to keep the bloodline pure, you know what they say, keep it in the family. So I switched on the air conditioners and hatched the eggs. Both of the males got good stats, so they'd be called boss. And the female is missing the good HP, so she'll be called female and used for breeding anyway. It's kind of sus that you can enable breeding on baby dinos, but hey, who am I to complain? Now, the next day was an exciting one. It was time that I got some running water to the castle. The main reason being that I needed it for an industrial cooker in order to make medical brews later on for the boss fight. Farmed up some more metal, crafted a lot of water pipes, cleared out the hundreds of dinos in the river below my base, and started piping water up the cliff, which was actually quite tedious and time consuming. It took the entire of day 45, but the castle was feeling more like a home now that it had running water. I was a little bit worried about the day-night cycle because it was 90% day, which means there was no way I could go up to the surface. So I was kind of worried that I wouldn't be able to get all the things I needed for the boss fight in time. So I decided to get a lot more of the farming out of the way now and just farm for the entire day so that I could focus on more important things on the future days. The next day, the cycle changed back to 90% night. Perfect. There was no way I was going to waste this opportunity. I spent the next days farming drops on the surface. The notable drops I got were flak leggings, a flak chest piece, and a flak boots blueprint, which was honestly pretty average, but still a lot better than the primitive one that I was currently using. I was very happy with the progress. I had good flak in 4 out of the 5 slots that I needed. Things were looking up. I started believing that I could actually beat the boss in time. After 3 nights of hunting drops on the surface, the cycle changed once again. It looked like it was on 3-day cycles, and it was now back to 50% day. This is all the loot that I've gotten from the surface so far. This box on the right is everything that is useless to the challenge, and the one on the left is everything that we need for the boss fight. Now if you take a look here, you'll see that I've only acquired 1 artifact and 1 rock drake feather, which is pretty far away from what's required to actually start the boss fight. So I decided it was time I get a move on, and today I go for the second artifact, the artifact of the stalker. But from what I'd heard, if you're prepared enough, and by that I mean if you owned a rock drake, you can make it through this cave with ease using the handy rock drake camouflage ability. So I jumped on my rock drake and headed down to the cave. I was making my way through the cave easily, invisibly crawling along the walls, but I cancelled my camouflage in order to clear out the dinosaurs around this yellow drop. And luckily I did, because inside was a really nice megalo saddle which would come in handy for the boss fight. After that I went straight towards the artifact, again cleared out the dinosaurs guarding it. After the fear I felt in the glowtail cave, I would have to say that this is now what I consider to be the easiest cave on Aberration. I looted the artifact and headed straight back to base. Now the next 4 days, that's right, it took me 4 entire days to find 8 basilisks. Now I don't know if that's good or bad, but it felt insanely slow. Again, it made me start worrying that I wouldn't have enough time for the boss fight. But anyway, it was now day 54 and I had 8 basilisk scales, which were needed for the boss. It was time for me to breed up my second batch of megalos. One of them was left on breeding, so I have 1 egg already, 5 eggs in total. I forget which one is the incest baby, but I'm pretty sure it would be easy to tell once they're born. They make so much noise when they're walking around as babies. I guess they have the same animations as adults. So we've got 2 new females for breeding, 2 males with the stats for the boss fight, and this guy over here. With the second batch of megalos raising, I wanted to start tackling the rest of the trophies needed for the boss fight. Starting with the ones down in the radiation zone, rock drake feathers and reaper glands. Now since I was already going to be killing reapers anyway, and at some point in the challenge I would like to try and tame one. The main reason being is that reaper taming is probably the most dangerous thing on Aberration outside of fighting the actual boss. So I decided to make myself a reaper trap and place it down in the radiation zone in advance. That way we can test to see if it works and then use it again later for the tame. So I collected all the rock drake feathers I need pretty easily, they're all over the place down here. Then I found myself a reaper, and as I found it, my game decided to fatal error. I thought that was the end for me. As I logged back in, I was just assuming that I would be dead. I was devastated to die on day 55. Luckily, when I logged back in, everything was fine. I built the reaper trap up pretty quickly, and then I realized that I built it facing the wrong direction. It could still be used, but it would be a lot more annoying to actually lure them in here. After struggling to lure my first Reaper into the trap, it seemed to be working perfectly. I killed it for its glands and plan to return to the trap later on to tame one of my own. With all the trophies I needed from the rad zone, I made my way up to base. All I needed now was one more artifact and the trophies from the Alpha Crab, Basilisk, and Reaper, which were honestly some of the rarest creatures to find on the map. The next thing I needed was medical brews, so I crafted myself up an industrial cooker using the water pipes that I installed earlier. The only thing missing from the craft was polymer, so I hopped on my rock drake and headed down to the river below my base to kill some crabs. And to my surprise, the alpha crab was right there, right below my base. It must have spawned in after I cleared out all the dinos down here earlier when I started piping in the water. I took it down with ease compared to the alpha reaper that I was fighting earlier. 2 birds, 1 stone. I had my alpha crab claw, as well as the polymer that I needed to craft the industrial cooker. So I placed down the cooker, rode 8 for the first time since like day 15 to farm up some tinto berries, and made myself some much needed medical brews. I mated the megalos for a 3rd time. Ape was seriously interested in watching them mate for some reason. He's a creepy guy, what can I say? I surprisingly got 6 good ones, so I named them all boss. Our boss fight megalo collection was coming along very nicely. After that, I crafted myself up some scuba gear in preparation to head into the 3rd and final cave of Aberration, the Shadow Cave. While making my way to the Shadow Cave, I spotted another alpha crab. If only it was this easy to find the alpha basilisk, I would be pretty much done with the trophy. So I found the entrance to the cave pretty easily. I've run this one quite a few times in the past. Although as I say that, I struggled to actually get inside, mainly because the rock drake couldn't actually fit. So I had to cryo it up and then swim inside of the cave. And surprise, surprise, the cave once again is pitch black. This has to be some kind of graphical glitch on my end. But I managed to get through the cave with ease once again using the rock drake invis. I didn't have to fight a single mob, I just swam straight past all of the dangerous things, straight into the artifact chamber. Looted the artifact quickly and made my way out of the cave. All the hype I built around that, and that was probably the easiest of the 3. With the night cycle changing once again and not being able to farm drops, I decided to attempt the most dangerous thing so far in the series. It was time for me to try and tame myself up a Reaper. I was very nervous. This was something that could potentially end the 100-day journey so far. During a Reaper tame, you're left at 1 HP twice throughout the process. So I repaired my hazard suits and headed down into the radiation zone to the trap we placed earlier. I found one after not long of searching, and after struggling to get it into the trap for ages because of me placing it facing the wrong direction, I finally managed to get it in. However, things didn't go as planned. When a Reaper's ready to impregnate you, they will let off a pink glow. I never actually saw the glow on this one, so I ended up just randomly killing it. So after repeating the process over again, only this time I damaged it entirely without a light source, which made it take massively reduced damage, but there was no chance of me killing it. There it is, the pink glow. And luckily it grabbed me right off my rock drake and also placed me down right next to it. It was perfect. I got straight on the rock drake and started chugging medical brews as fast as I could to heal up. I killed the Reaper in the trap, which gave me the XP needed on the baby to level it up. Now I had 5 minutes to rush back to base and prepare a room to give birth to the Reaper in. I decided to make use of one of the towers on the castle walls. I replaced the doorways with stone walls. I was hoping this thing couldn't jump through windows or we were definitely going to lose it. I looked so fat in my flak armor while pregnant with a Reaper, but there we go, I gave birth to it. I quickly rushed outside and walled it in. As the baby does try to kill you after you give birth to it, I quickly chugged the med brews once again to heal up. Once I was healed up, I went in and claimed the baby. And it was so close it almost ran out once again, but I managed to wall it in just in time. Now, day 65 onwards is very repetitive, and my notes got kind of lazy towards the end. Everything from this day onwards was just things that were required for the boss fight. Killing basilisks and reapers to try and force an alpha to spawn, and doing surface drops whenever possible. So the first thing I did was line up the megalos nicely in the base and breed them one last time to get the amount needed for the final boss fight. On day 69 I got extremely lucky and managed to find an alpha basilisk in the portal zone. It's actually my first time ever seeing one of these in game. It looked really cool and glowed in the dark, and it was surprisingly very easy to kill, unlike the alpha reaper. And there we go, I got myself an Alpha Basilisk Fang. On day 71, I found myself a flak chest piece blueprint on the surface while I was killing Reapers, hoping for an Alpha to spawn in. On day 72, for the next 11 days, I run up and down the rivers on Aberration, leveling every single Megalo that I had in the base one by one. I killed a few hundred Spinos at least. They all have different amounts of EXP, but this one is the most leveled, so it can potentially have up to 30k health and 1000% damage. I went kind of overboard on the first one and got lazier and lazier with the later ones, so as you can see they have less and less XP. On day 87, I headed back to the surface in search of more drops, and on my way towards the first drop I saw, I found an Alpha Reaper. It was perfect. Luck was finally on our side. All I could think to myself was hopefully this one didn't despawn. The fight with the Reaper was a long one, but I managed to secure the final trophy that was needed, and there was only one obstacle left in my way, and that was Alpha Rockwell. On day 91, the night cycle changed to 90% day. That was it. There was going to be no more opportunities for me to hunt drops. I was going to have to head into the boss fight with primitive saddles. So I cut my losses and crafted 17 primitive Megalo saddles. Luckily they were primitive and they were very cheap for me to make. I had all the materials I needed. The only thing left was for me to cryo them up, kit myself up, and head over to the terminal where I would start the boss fight. With the Megalos cryoed, the base felt so empty. I rode around on Ape one last time, as it was very likely the last time I'd see him. He had been hard at work picking fiber for the last 80 days. Goodbye, old friend. It was time for the descent. Everything that happened in the past 90 days was all leading up to this. I felt nervous. I'd never fought Alpha Rockwell solo before. I didn't do any research prior to going in. Would I even be able to pull this off with primitive saddle dinos, I thought to myself. I uncryed all the Megalos on the terminal and waited for them to wake up. This was it. The end boss of Aberration. Alpha Rockwell. The end of the journey. Let's do this. Come on, die. Please. Come on. Yes. Oh, thank God.